We are here to tell you all about the program and mostly to have a chance to answer some questions. So we'll start with some quick introductions. So I'm Katie Howard. I'm the program officer here at the Maine Community Foundation who's in charge of this program. So I'm sort of your contact for any questions about your application or generally anything about the program or Maine Community Foundation. We have with us Joey Landaro, who's our program associate, and he's going to help us with the technology. We are in webinar mode, so you can't unmute yourself and we can't see you. But if you have questions, please raise your hand. We're going to answer them at the end. I'm going to probably spend about 10 minutes sort of giving you all the information we have, and then we'll do questions. So feel free to hit that hand raised anytime, but we'll get to them at the end. And Joy will unmute you and we'll just go in order. And we also have Ann Ball. She's on the committee for this program and also helps us with sort of the energy efficiency part of this. She's from the Maine Downtown Center of the Maine Development Foundation. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We have about 30 people here today, which is fantastic. And hopefully we can answer a lot of your questions because I know this program can be a little technical and a little confusing. So I think, Joey, do you want to get started with the PowerPoint? All right, let's go to the next one. So our quick agenda for today, we just did introductions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Maine Community Foundation. We're going to go through some sort of statistics about this grant program. We're going to talk about the criteria and the priorities. We're going to talk about the different grant types within this program, the timeline for the program, and then we should have plenty of time for questions because I'm sure there will be a few. Next one. So just for those of you that maybe aren't that familiar with the Maine Community Foundation, we were founded in 1983, so we're 40 years old this year. We have about 50 staff. We're headquartered in Ellsworth. We also have an office in Portland, which is where I am today. And we have staff also that work from home all around the state. So we cover the full state. We have a network of about 500 volunteers who help us make grant decisions through all of our competitive grant programs, of which this is one of them. The Community Foundation as a whole, we manage about 2,000 different funds. And those are made up of a few different kinds of funds, the biggest one being donor advised funds, which some of you may be familiar with. They're often called DAFs. And those are sort of individuals give their money to the Maine Community Foundation and we hold it for them, but they retain control over how it gets dispersed charitably. Some people think of it as sort of a charitable checkbook. And we offer those donors staff who can help them learn about new organizations and know what's sort of going on in the state. They also have access to any proposal that's submitted through our competitive grant programs. So your proposals to Belvedere will be made available to donors online, and they're able to search through this cool database that we created for them. And sometimes funding will come directly from a donor, and not through the competitive process. What else do we also have scholarships. We have about 600 different scholarship funds. They're listed on our website. They're all over the state, and that's a great resource for students. And then we have our competitive grant programs, which we have about 20 right now, and they have different deadlines, different criteria, around different issue areas and geography. And so Belvedere is one of those 20. And the process for most of them is that people submit some proposals. There's different deadlines throughout the year. And we have community members that are advisors who make decisions about where the funding goes in those. And as I mentioned, any eligible proposal submitted through any of our grant programs is available, will become available to donors through our Giving Together online portal, which is very cool. The other thing I like to mention for nonprofits is we also have agency funds. So we have about 250 nonprofits throughout the state that have their long-term investments with us, which is a really great option, especially if you're smaller and don't have a lot of investment experience. You can take advantage of our large pool of funds, and we have an investment committee and staff who manage those. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check our website as well. So that's the quick spiel about the Maine Community Foundation. So let's talk about Belvedere. Joey, you can switch. So the Belvedere Historic Preservation and Energy Efficiency Program is our longest named program for sure. This year we'll have about $315,000 to give away. And the way, my notes, make sure I'm doing this right. The way that our competitive grant programs work is they're often a bunch of different funds that come together to make up the program. So in this one, we have a few different funds. So about 100 or you can go back, Joey. About 130 of the 315 are specifically for proposals from Washington and Hancock counties. About 125,000 will be awarded for statewide restoration proposals. And then we have about $60,000 for energy efficiency and energy. So those are the energy implementation and energy audits. We typically receive about $1 million in requests. Last year, we were able to fund about half of the requests we had. The year before that, about 36%. So you'll see it's a pretty competitive grant program. Next slide, please. So we have, all our programs have criteria and priorities. So the criteria are required. These are your eligibility criteria, and your priorities are how we make decisions. So these are the things we look at in order to pick which proposals will get funded. So our criteria is that your building needs to be owned by an eligible grantee. So it has to be owned by a nonprofit or a municipality. It can't be leased, it has to be fully owned. And the building needs to be on the historic register, the National Historic Register, or eligible to be on the historic register, or a contributing building in a federal historic district. If you have questions about that, if you're not sure, you can contact the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. It's their job to help people figure these things out, and they can answer those questions pretty quickly. So those are requirements. And then we look at priorities. So these are the things that will make a really strong proposal. So we want to see buildings that have a lot of community use and community value. So they're available to the public. They're not limited in any way about, they're usually not limited about who can and can't get into them. We want to know that the community values them and uses them. The building, we look at the significance of the historic building, the story, like why is it significantly historic for the region? Why is the architecture special? We look at those kinds of things. We look at the clarity of your plan. So all the general restoration proposals, we ask for contractor estimates. So we want to see that you've had a contractor come in and they have a clear plan for what needs to happen with the building. And we want to see a commitment to stewardship. So we want to see an ongoing maintenance plan. You know, these buildings require a lot of ongoing maintenance. And this program doesn't fund ongoing maintenance. So we want to be sure that the work that you're doing has a plan for how it's going to be cared for in the future. I wanted to note here that it's important who your grant contact is. When you fill out the proposal, we'll be getting in touch with that person to ask any questions. And we also offer this list of auditors and contractors through Efficiency Maine, but you are not required to use one of these contractors. It's just a great resource if you're looking for someone. And do you have anything to add here about the criteria or priorities?
No, I just think I'll get into it when we get to the energy efficiency slides. But if you are considering any energy improvements, whether it's energy upgrades or an energy audit, it's really important to make sure that those professionals have experience with historic buildings.
Perfect. All right, now we're going to move to grant types. So this is where this program can be a little confusing. So you can apply for general restoration. So that is work related to the preservation, restoration, and reuse of a historical building. And that can also include professional assessments, surveys, plans. So you can apply for things like that. The second type is energy efficiency implementation. So this is work that is directly tied to an audit that's been done in the past 3 years for energy efficiency on your building. So when you apply for energy efficiency, we're going to ask for that audit to be submitted, and we're going to be checking that the work you're asking for is on your audit. The third thing is energy. We fund energy audits of historic buildings. And last fall, we turned that into a rolling deadline. So that is a separate application that's been open. And so people can apply at any time for that. And we're going to have those due June 1st. So you can just apply for an energy audit. You need to have a quote from an energy auditor. And those are a maximum of $5,000. So those are sort of the 3 types, but you can apply for general restoration and energy efficiency together as long as you have that audit, and the maximum award is $20,000. We're going to get into each of these types a little more detail, but that's sort of the important thing to know, is that there's sort of these 3 types, and you can apply for restoration and energy efficiency at the same time. You can also apply for restoration and an energy audit at the same time, but those are 2 separate applications. And we can go through that again at the end. The other thing we want to mention, so this year is the last year for energy audits and energy efficiency projects. That funding was tied to a grant that we had applied for, and we've decided not to continue that. Partially, we're in the midst of a new strategic plan and simplifying some of our grant programs. So we're a little bummed about that, but just want to let you know that this will be the last year of that. All right, that's a lot of information. Next slide, please. So general restoration. So now we'll get into each of the types with a little bit more detail. So when you apply for general restoration, first off, you need to have a contractor's estimate and submit photos with your proposal. The photos are really important. It helps our advisors to see the building and really get an idea of what you're up to. So we are focused on historical preservation restoration work. So we want the things that to avoid asking for. These are not strong proposals. When the work that you're talking about is cosmetic, so if it's just you need a new paint job because the paint's not looking great, that's not a strong ask. Replacement versus restoration. We want to restore things, not replace them. Windows is sort of one of the ones that really comes up a lot in this. And if it is a feature that cannot be restored, you can apply for it, but you really need to make a case for why it can't be restored and what the plan is. You really want to avoid any work that's not specifically about a historic feature. So a new bathroom, a new kitchen, those are not strong proposals. You want to avoid ongoing maintenance. So, you need to paint every, 10 years. That's not a great request because it is a competitive grant program. Those sort of ongoing maintenance, we want to see that you have a plan for that and that you're covering that with your regular budget. You also shouldn't apply for buildings that are currently vacant and have no plan for how they're going to open and be part of the community. I think one of the caveats to this is that if it's a building that you've recently purchased or recently taken ownership of, we will fund more sort of maintenance, more sort of deferred maintenance, because particularly when the story is that it's been neglected for a while, and we're looking to fix it up to get it back up to standards. So that is you're welcome to apply for that. I think that's all I have to say about that. So I think we can move to the next one. I'm going to hand it over to Anne to talk about energy efficiency and audits.
Sure. So you can apply for energy efficiency up to $20,000 for implementation of an energy efficiency project. And it does require that you have a current energy audit that was done in the last 3 years. And if you aren't sure whether the audit qualifies, you can send your audit to me and I can take a look at it. The applications really need to relate to the audit. So sometimes organizations say, oh, we know what we need. We need, new insulation, or we need to repair our windows. But when the audit is actually done and makes priorities for what is going to be the most impactful investment as far as saving energy costs or increasing the kind of comfort of the people using your building, it might not be what you think it is. And that's why we really want you to tie it to an audit, because it might be insulation, or it might be drainage, getting water out of the basement and away from the building and drying it out. Those type of investments sometimes are more important to saving energy costs. And that's why we rely so much on an energy audit. And we don't want a project that will impact the historic features of the building. And it is possible to do great energy efficiency upgrades in a historic building. They can do well together. But if you aren't sure about what you're proposing and if it impacts the historic features, you can reach out to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. Again, they are the keeper of all the buildings on the National Register or that are eligible for the National Register, and they can make that decision or have a conversation with you. The other thing that we really encourage in implementation is to tie your proposed work to Efficiency Maine incentives. You might be, again, insulation, for instance. Sometimes Efficiency Maine has incentives where you can use a certain type of insulation and you can actually get money back. And that's a way to save you money and put it right in your pockets. So it's really important when you develop your proposal and you're looking at how much money you're applying for and where other sources of funding are coming from. There might be funding coming from Efficiency Maine with one of your proposals, and your auditor should be able to do that for you. I think I'm going to go to the next slide. Great. Energy audits. As Katie mentioned, they are up to $5,000. They are on a rolling basis with our last deadline being June 1st. So if you want to submit an application next week, that's okay, but not after June 1st. And you do need to have an estimate from an auditor. And there is information about how to apply on the Maine Community Foundation website. And if you need a list of auditors and you go to Efficiency Maine, you will see them by region. And as I mentioned earlier with Katie, it's really important to say, hello, auditor, could I have an estimate? And do you have experience with historic buildings? Just to make sure that they are aware of the systems and the special features of that historic building so that they're not proposing things that whether it's something like replacement windows or something about pulling off trim to put in insulation or some other things like that. So that's the energy audit. And Katie, I think that's it, right?
That's it for you for the moment. I'm going to do one more slide.
Yes, sorry.
We're going to do I wanted to talk about the timeline of this program. So all of our programs, the application opens 3 months in advance. So this application is up and running as of March 1st. The deadline is June 1st. And once those proposals come in, they go through sort of our due diligence is where we make sure they're eligible. And then it takes us through June and July to get our 10 committee members to read the proposals, put together all their reviews, and then we meet and make those decisions. When we're making those decisions, we're looking at those criteria and priorities, but also looking at the geography of the state. We want to make sure that we're funding projects all around the state and different kinds of projects. So, if we don't want to fund a bunch of projects just in Oxford County. So that is all taken into account as well. And also just wanted to mention that we do report, but I highly encourage people to submit them. They're really short. We don't ask.
Katie,
I'm muted.
Yeah, you've gone on mute twice in your last couple seconds, so you might want to repeat.
I don't know what is happening. Sorry about that. Sorry.
So you said something about submitting something, but we didn't hear what you were saying.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think
okay.
I was hitting my keyboard. So yes, the decisions are made in August by our committee of 10 people. And you'll hear from us sort of in early August. And I also just wanted to mention reports. They're not required, but we really encourage people to fill them out. They're really short and don't require any financial reporting, which I used to be a grant writer, so I think they're really easy to do. So that's just sort of how the process will happen. And I think that's all the information we have for you. And I know we went through a lot of information rather quickly because I wanted to keep a lot of time for questions. So Joey, if you just want to sort of call on people and we can answer questions until we're done.
All right, I am going to start by unmuting Eliza Earl.
Hi, Eliza.
You'll have to unmute yourself. I can give you the opportunity to talk, but I can't unmute you.
I am now unmuted, and I think I hit the hand by mistake. I'm well underway with my proposal, and if I have questions as we go along, I will put my hand up again. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Actually, Joey, can you skip to the last slide for a minute, and then we can probably take the slides down, but the last slide has our contact information. And this is all available on the website as well.
Yep. All right. Next person is Kathy Young. Should be unmuted.
Hi, Kathy.
Well, I have two questions actually, because I just sent you an email. One is I got the audit last year. Do I submit with my report, which I already submitted, the actual audit report with my report, or are you going to wait, because my request is going to be an implementation from that report? So, and I know I need to submit the audit report.
Yeah, you don't need to submit the audit with your grant report, but you do need to submit it with your proposal for energy implementation. Okay.
My other question was, in all the different categories, is the max 20, whether it's just restoration or energy? It doesn't matter. It's 20 grand is max.
20,000 is the maximum for energy efficiency and general restoration. The energy audit is in addition, so you can apply for up to 20 for restoration and efficiency implementation.
Right.
But you wouldn't be applying for energy efficiency implementation and an audit, but you can.
No, I got the audit last year.
So
yeah. Okay. And while you're not going to be continuing to fund audits, are you going to continue to fund implementation, or is that now just going to become general restoration into the future?
So we're really looking at the whole program, and we'll probably be making some other pretty significant changes.
Okay.
But I can tell you for sure that the implementation and the energy audit as it is now is not continuing. If we did something similar, it would be through a different kind of program.
Okay, because what I'm realizing is a lot of our restoration is a result of poor energy, like damp and different things. So they're hand in hand, but so anyway, okay, never mind. I mean, I know what part of the audit I'm going to ask for implementation this year, and I'll just wait for next year, because
great,
we're not going anywhere. Thanks.
Yeah, and I know it's confusing and can be frustrating when grant programs change, but it's just something that we have to do.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
All right, looks like next is Nicole Poirier, and you should be able to talk, Nicole.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question about if we have a larger project, can the 20,000 be used in part to fund only parts of a larger restoration project?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then do you have to make it very clear? Like, can you say, okay, we have a $350,000 stained glass that that needs to be repaired. We'd love to have 20,000 to go to it. Do you have to be specific about whether that's one stained glass or something in particular as part of a larger project?
I don't think you need to be particular. You'll see there's a project budget where you lay out the costs of the budget and what you'll be putting the Maine Community Foundation funds towards. I think the answer is yes, if I'm understanding your question. You can certainly, you would apply for like a larger project and we would fund a part of that.
Okay.
And it's kind of up to you how you want to break your project up.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And Anne, please let me know if you disagree with any of my answers.
That was fine.
Right. Next is Carrie Hadley.
Hello, everybody. Carrie Hadley with the Maine Art Gallery that resides in the gorgeous 1807 Old Academy building in Wiscasset. My question is, how do we determine capital projects, or how do you, and maybe it's a question for Mike Johnson, determine what's a capital project versus what is maintenance? Is there a definition that can apply broadly? Or, for instance, we need to restore our windows in the old Academy building, but as part of that restoration, in order to, we don't want to put, restored windows on an older sill that needed maybe to be repaired or painted. So there's painting involved, and so how do we look at that project and how is it quantified?
Anne, do you have thoughts on this? I'm happy to answer it too, but Anne's
Sure.
been working on this program a lot longer than I have, so.
Oh, well, all right. I'll try. Restoration of windows is okay to apply for that. That is a big capital investment. And yes, the painting is part of that, and you can include that in your proposal. And, the painting, obviously you can't put paint on a window that's falling apart. So in this major restoration of your windows, I do look at that as kind of holistically the ask. If you were to come and to have deferred maintenance, like Katie mentioned, painting every 10 years, roofs, every 15 to 20 years. If an organization isn't keeping up with ongoing maintenance, that seems more like an ongoing maintenance issue and not a logical application to this program. And I'll see if Katie wants to add anything.
No, I agree. And it's not always like a clear answer. It's sort of case by case. But I think you made a good example. Is it restoration work, or is it just something that needs to happen all the time? And a stronger proposal is not something that just like regular maintenance, like painting roofs, things like that. And I hope that's helpful. It's not always clear to answer without sort of the specific example.
We did replace the roof back in 2011 with a grant from another foundation, but I would have thought even a roof replacement would be a capital. I'm just surprised to hear.
It's different. It's different, Carrie, if it's actually replacing rotten timbers in a roof versus replacing, the surface material of the roof. I think there's a little bit difference in that. You can, you need to keep up with roof maintenance, for instance, and if there's leaks, not let them go, like fix them in that year. But, if it's a full like roof replacement, that's, to me, in my mind, a capital expense.
Okay, and one more quick question. I don't want to dominate. Cupola repair, or again, I guess it is a repair. We have a lovely cupola, and we have been addressing some minor leaks in that roof. But ideally, now there's really needs an entire project to address, everything that needs to be addressed there. Is that considered capital, or?
Yeah, I would say if a cupola is, a significant feature, architectural feature of the building, and it is, you know, been cared for, regularly painted and leaks, but it has become, you know, rotten or, you know, is needing major repairs, then to me, that's a capital expenditure.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
All right, it looks like Richard Burbank is next. Did he lower his hand? I guess we'll go to Bill Bayreuther next.
Hi, Bill. I think you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I was trying. I seem to have succeeded. Hi, Katie and Ann, and everybody. One of my clients is about to do a major rehabilitation project on their church. We have a historic structure assessment, a highly detailed one, produced by a well-known architectural engineering firm. It contains estimates of probable cost for all the different components of the project, but we do not have in hand actual contractors' estimates. Would that serve the purpose without having estimates from specific contractors?
How old is the historic structures report that you reference?
Let's see, less than a month old.
So the numbers are pretty current.
Yes, they certainly are. And that was what we just had just revised.
Katie?
I mean, I was going to say we do ask for a contractor estimate. And I know that's not always easy to get, particularly if you're just getting started in a project. It can be very time consuming. So I think in this case, I think you could apply with that, but maybe note where you are in the process of securing a contractor, and maybe that estimate comes in sort of during this process, or even if you get one before, we can talk about that. But I would say it's a stronger proposal with a contractor estimate. Partially just because these projects, it can take a while to get a contractor on board. These projects take a long time, and it sort of signifies that the project is ready to go and that the funding will be used in a year, which is sort of the goal. Although we know these projects often get delayed.
Yes, thank you. There will be a number of contractors involved in this, and perhaps what we might do would be to limit the ask to perhaps just the masonry work.
Yeah, that could make it much easier to get that estimate together. Okay. Yeah, we just need an estimate for the work that you're asking.
Yeah, not the whole thing.
Yeah, not the whole thing.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, Charles Nicolau should be able to talk now.
Have I unmuted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, success. Good. It's a good start toward the application. Question. This is First Parish Church in Portland with 5 monumental exterior windows in the meeting house. We applied for successfully and received a grant 2 years ago for that's allowed the restoration of 2 windows with the help of Belvedere and the local match. Where does a reapplication for another window or storm windows in this case? Is there any limitation on reapplications or second time around applications?
No, there's not a limit, but Anne, do you have any thoughts on if that's a strong proposal?
Well, I remember the proposal from when we reviewed it a couple years ago, and it is highly unusual sized and scale of window restoration. I can't really answer it there. Like Katie said, there's no limit on applying again. We certainly have organizations that come back to, seek funding an additional time. I think it's going to depend on the pool of applicants and, all those criteria that Katie went over. Is it a community hub? What's the geographic diversity? And all of those things. So there's nothing holding you back, but I don't think we can say without seeing the pool as to whether you would have a good chance or not.
I understand. Let me, if I might add, make a follow-up question.
Sure.
You're correct. The restoration of the monumental windows as historic windows is underway now. Will be largely completed in a matter of months. What's different this time around would be based on the energy efficiency, some customized storm windows that would provide both for ventilation in warm weather and insulation in the cold weather. So I'm sitting here sort of scratching my head saying, well, I'm assuming we're a combination of energy efficiency and general restoration. And if I heard you right, Katie, you said you can apply in both categories, or it's the same application, general restoration and energy efficiency. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's the same application, and you can apply for a combination of both. But you do need to have an energy audit completed in the last 3 years that shows the need for any of that energy implementation work. So if those storm windows are shown on an audit, then you can add those to your application. But if it's not shown on an audit, it wouldn't be eligible.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Amy Scott.
Hi there. I am just wondering, with the rolling deadline for the energy audits, how long does it take for a decision for those to come? I'm assuming they're not on the same timeline as the other proposal application process.
So right now they're on sort of a 4-week timeline. And as we're getting closer to that sort of June 1st deadline, I would say the rolling part of it isn't going to last that much longer before they just start going in with the rest of the pool. So I would say you can apply for that anytime. But what is it now? It's April. Probably within the next month, those might just start getting put in with the rest of the pool for June 1st. If
Great,
that makes sense.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thanks very much.
All right, Richard Burbank.
Yes, my question is regarding energy audits, and typically there's a whole list, and some are more low-hanging fruit, cost-effective, and others are, further down the list. If an applicant was applying under the energy efficiency improvements, and because item 1 and 2 may not be what's being applied for the Belvedere funds, but if there's a plan in place to address item 1 and 2 with alternate funds or alternate plans, is that being open to consideration? I'll give you an example.
I don't even think you need to give an example. It's a yes, Richard. If you have an audit, it's submitted with your application, and then in your application, you make the case for why you're doing item 3 and what your plan is for addressing item 1 and 2. And there's kind of a holistic look at the building. That is absolutely a logical narrative. The people reviewing the application understand that it is not always a sequential, or it's sequential with different funding sources, or all the many possibilities.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It looks like Carrie has another question, so I will
Hi guys again. Thank you. The subject of the storm windows came up. We have talked to energy audit people. We haven't had a formal assessment done. We have had an historic condition assessment done as part of a grant from the 1772 Foundation. Would that suffice, or would we still need, and custom storm windows were suggested as part of this plan. Does that suffice, or we still would need to go on to have an energy audit?
Unless your building assessment had an energy efficiency component, it would not suffice. You have to have an energy audit that looks at the building. Where are the leakages for energy expenditures, heat loss, all those things? You have to look at the building that way to be able to make those determinations. So unless the recommendation of those storm windows is grounded in some kind of understanding of the building's energy usage, I don't think you could apply for those funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and I think that
there is
like
a question in the chat, Joey.
Okay.
Someone was having trouble muting themselves. And I'm happy to read it if you want.
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can see it, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. It's from Jennifer. She said, I'm wondering about an application for a building that is a contributing structure in a historic district. The building itself was built in the 1950s, so it's not terribly old. Will an application for this building be at a disadvantage compared to other historic structures? And I'm happy to answer the question, Katie, if you would like.
Please.
Okay.
I'm also curious.
Okay.
I think I know the answer.
So Jennifer, if the building is built in the 1950s and is considered contributing to the historic district, it is absolutely as contributing as any other building from the 1850s. So yes, it would be absolutely fine to apply for that building.
And I also see a question from Don Sear about if storm windows have to be approved by the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. And that is an interesting question. And do you know the answer to that? I think I do, but I would love to.
A little bit depends if they're interior or exterior storms. And all I can tell you, Don, is that we have 2 members from the Maine Historic Preservation Commission staff that sit on the review panel, and they would absolutely be considering that. But if an applicant wants to understand whether this is an okay thing to apply for, they could call the Maine Historic Preservation Commission prior to the grant deadline.
Yeah, we do. All the work that's done needs to be following those national standards of historic preservation, and the MHPC would be the people to ask that question directly.
Yep.
All right, looks like one more raised hand from Chad. So get Chad in here to talk.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Sure.
Yes.
We're planning on applying for, we have our meeting house, which is on the historical registry, and kind of a prominent stone staircase. It's a prominent architectural feature that's actively falling apart, a little bit of a hazard. We've been in touch with masons already, getting quotes and all that. My question is about timing. Obviously kind of at the mercy of their work schedule. And we're trying to get it scheduled later in the summer and the fall. So obviously if we got the grant, there would be, time to receive funds. If that work happens to commence before the announcement is made, but we haven't paid anybody yet, is that an issue, or is it really important that the entirety of the project happens after the announcement date?
I would say the funds you receive from the Maine Community Foundation need to be spent after you receive them. Okay. And hopefully your project costs more than our grant. So if you sort of have some expenditures beforehand, that's fine. It's technically, we want you to not spend our grant on expenses already incurred.
Okay. And
so usually in these projects, they're so big that it's not a problem.
Yeah, this is I think between $30,000 and $40,000 project. So obviously we'd put some money down, but we wouldn't have put so much money that it would include whatever we might hopefully receive from the Maine Community Foundation. So, all right, thank you.
And you did say the stairs are a historic feature of the building.
Yes,
that's often a question with stairs.
Yeah, they're part of the original structure of the building. It's a prominent architectural feature. We're on the historical registry, and part of the downtown historic district. So we've been doing a lot of exterior work, ceiling stone, and up. We spent about, I think, $400,000 on windows. Didn't get a grant in the past for that, but we're making progress anyway. But hopefully this is I think this has a little more urgency than some of our other applications in the past.
That's great. I would suggest, Chad, if the sequencing and the timing is a potential issue, that perhaps in the grant narrative, you just make it really clear that we will be starting on X date with phase 1 at our own cost. And we are applying for, the step 2, which work would commence, whatever that is, September 1st or after you'd be notified. I think there's a way to make that clear so that the reviewers aren't concerned.
Okay. Yeah. And I think they typically want like a third in advance. So actually the numbers work out pretty well. So, but that was my only kind of concern about timing. So, all right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jack. All right. And I guess we're coming back to Carrie again. You're up. Carrie, did you still have a question? Your hand was up and I wasn't sure if you had lowered it yet from last time.
Sorry, I think it was a mistake. I lowered it afterwards. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, that's fine. Just making sure.
Thank you.
Is that everybody?
I think that's everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope this was helpful. Please reach out if you have other questions. It is a competitive grant program, so it's always great to get any feedback or questions answered so that you're not wasting time doing all this work. So our contact information is there. This webinar will be up on the website soon. All this information is on our website. And please reach out if there's anything we can help you with. And thanks for your time. And you get 12 minutes added to your day. Thank you, Joey and Anne. I really appreciate your help with this.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Bye.
all.